The worst horror movie I ever saw was fucking great.
Hello and welcome to This May Hurt a Bit. My name is James Strayer and this is
John C. Myers.
And we're a horror franchise podcast discussing each film in horror franchises. And today we are wrapping up all of our chats on the Hellraiser series. I don't want to sound too joyful, but I am kind of glad to be coming to an end of Hellraiser movies.
Yes.
Especially as it gets nicer outside and sunnier, and I just kind of want to step away from the dourness of the Hellraisers for a while.
Yeah, it got not fun there for a bit.
Right. But as you know, God, as I was saying early on, and I got tired of myself actually saying this, but like this franchise is such a great example of like the thesis of this show. Like I wanted to go through and just see if there was anything nice to dig out of those Hellraiser movies, or just like what happens when you commit yourself to a long haul. And I definitely have some thoughts on smashing together so many movies in such a short period of time and what it did to me this time around.
Yeah, I was going to say what it does to the soul.
I can barely get it out. You know, the funny thing is like we did 12 Friday the 13th movies. We kicked off the show by doing 12 of those. And that's when we were doing them once a week too. So it was even more truncated. But boy, I tell you, those are a whole lot more fun than the Hellraiser series.
Yeah, I mean, the series really got me thinking about, how the sausage is made. In that, like Friday the 13th, as friend of the show Greg Begoni pointed out, among other things, is a snapshot for like every year of the 80s. Yeah. Because it came out like once a year. And so that's kind of a fun element to it. They always went, look, we're embarrassed by this, but it makes money. So just, we have limits, but and as it went on, people were getting increasingly irritated by the studios and Carl Buechler famously miserable about the studio's involvement in Seven, but they were still level of concept and quality they wanted for this thing, or even going to Silent Night, Deadly Night. Yeah. Where by the time part 4 rolled around, the higher ups at Live Entertainment were like, we don't care. Yeah. Just do whatever. It doesn't have to be Christmas related at all. We just are selling the name. Just go have fun with it. Yeah. Whereas we have the worst of both worlds in this, where it's like, but shoot this script that we bought very cheaply rather than like come up with something and make it work. So it's just really that deadbeat dad of Dimension Films showing up just enough to make things worse for everybody. Because I don't want to come down on Rick Boda and those people too much, because they were under, as we said, like they're under the gun to get this stuff done. It was these really bizarre decisions that were made at the high level.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this in the first episode on the franchise. I don't want to say that this was always my favorite franchise, because that's not right at all. But like the concept of Hellraiser and the Cenobites were always near the top of my favorites. I just always liked the vibe and all of that kind of thing. Watching them all so close together, definitely like... And, we were doing Patreon episodes about other Clive Barker works and stuff like that. So, I mean, obviously, we made the choice to jam all of this into our mouth and brain.
We were forced. We were forced by you, the listener.
For sure. But it did this one did kind of have a little bit of an effect on my enjoyment of like looking fondly on Hellraiser now. I'm not sure that I look as fondly on Hellraiser now.
Right. Because like, when the majority of the movies are pretty lackluster, do you go like, oh yeah, Hellraiser, that's good. Yeah. Or do you just associate it with the majority of the films that don't know what to do with Pinhead, that don't, all the things we talked about, the weird moralizing, just the pass out wake ups, rather than what the initial thought of Hellraiser, which was, I mean, the first two movies still are fantastic. Yes. And I think they're powerful enough there that you should still go, yeah, Hellraiser, that's good. But the franchise as a whole is less so.
Were there any of the latter ones, now that we're able to look back and, with the Hellraiser curve, as we've talked about, are there any of those latter ones that you've thought back to and been like, that's not so bad?
I mean, like it's the ones we've talked about, like Deader. I kind of have a soft spot for, just because I think Carrie Ware is pretty decent in it, and I like that they went in a different direction than what the previous two had done. Sure. So like in a vacuum, I can't necessarily say that Deader's great, or knowing what Gary Tunnicliffe was up against making Judgment and how it was sort of a passion project for him cuts that a lot of slack for me, because that's not particularly a great movie either. But I doubt I'll go and revisit any of them.
I won't either.
Those two, because the rest are just, particularly Inferno and Hell Seeker.
Yeah.
No thanks.
Yeah, I don't think that I can ever go back to those. Hell World is just stupid enough for me to kind of like, that was dumb. Again, looking back on it, you know.
Yeah, but like that's like I can throw that on with some friends. You know, like you're having just like a dumb sit around and poke fun and, you know, talk smart at movies, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there's a certain lightness to that one, a certain peppiness. Yeah. But yeah, so many other ones are just so grim.
I don't think that I will ever revisit any of them past 4. Really. And I could see myself throwing on 3 during Halloween just for like a fun slasher. Like that's the most enjoyable one anyway. So I could see myself going back to that one, maybe 4 in like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years or something. But
right. Yeah. But I mean, the new one, sure.
There you go.
I'll watch that one again. The reboot, as it were, which I keep hearing things they're going to make more of those. I don't know if that's actually happening, but I will. I mean, beyond just the sort of the remit of this podcast, I would go see it anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Because I like the direction they're going.
I think the easy, as we kind of go through our typical questions of wrapping up a franchise, I mean, it's obvious who the best non-Doug Bradley Pinhead is. Yeah. Without a doubt, which is Jamie Clayton.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the other twos, you know, we discussed at length. Those 2 other guys never had a chance, really.
They definitely were not set up for success, but I think one of them got it a little bit more. I think
he became a meme. Yeah.
The Paul T. Taylor version I like more. It felt more like Pinhead, whereas, I mean, everyone involved with Revelations is just sorry.
Right. I have nothing good to say about that movie.
Yeah. Hey, a job's a job. I get it. You get opportunity. You know, as Gary Tunnicliffe said himself, no one's like, oh, can I be in the like 9th Hellraiser movie? Sure. Oh boy.
Yeah.
But it's just, again, just the absolute shittiness of we just need to hold on to these rights. We don't actually care about what we're doing with it is pretty vile.
It's very palpable in the final product too.
Because it doesn't make any sense. It's like, yeah, you held on to it, but now people associate it with this. So way to go.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, obviously the new one, like it did well enough. I don't know how you actually measure these things when it's released on Hulu or, you know, streaming services, because those numbers are often very opaque, but that got made. That's cool. Yep. I mean, it probably would have regardless of who owned it.
Right. You know, I wonder if Hulu will look at things like that Hellraiser, and I know a lot of fans really liked that new Predator movie, and just thinking like, oh, maybe we should release some of these in theaters instead of just on our streaming platform, because
that would be nice.
I didn't love Prey, but I would have definitely saw it in the theater. Like, hey,
I think it would have been more fun in the theater. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, some of these would be fun to see in the theater as well. For various reasons, again, like a midnight movie, kind of thing for some of the middle ones,
right. Yeah, it's hard to pick, you know, like a favorite final girl and or a favorite like main character, because they're all so forgettable and just like paper thin. I never really glommed onto Kirsty Cotton that much anyway. She's fine, but she's not the highlight of the first Hellraiser movie for me personally. So it's hard to like search for another final person in the rest of the Hellraiser movies.
Yeah, and I mean, rightly so. The first 2 were much more focused on Julia, and you know, because Julia is amazing.
Yes,
and yeah. So I particularly because when they made the choice to be like, well, we'll make 2 movies in a row of a guy who's a piece of shit, and we're going to follow him around and have him figure out that he's a piece of shit and not really care. Not that exciting. Yeah, but I mean, Ashley Lawrence, fine. But yeah, in the later ones, I mean, I liked Odessa Azion. It's not necessarily like, oh, I hope they bring her back for the next one, because I think that would be kind of a waste of time. But I'm not necessarily interested in her getting more vengeance or something. Like if they bring her in as, you know, if she's a consultant in the next one of like, oh, well, let me tell you.
Yeah, I kind of feel like we've told her story and she will lament for the rest of her life. As far as picking out favorites from the entire franchise, if the main characters are not who we're there to see anyway, we can certainly find a few good Cenobites.
Oh, yeah.
And as crappy as all those middle movies were, you could at least pick out maybe one or two Cenobites to look at because, hey, that's what they were there for at that point. So,
Right. You're guaranteed at least a Chatterer.
right. I mean, I don't have to ask you who your favorite Cenobite is.
It's obvious.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, Butterball's the guy.
Yeah.
He's the number one stunner. But
Yeah.
I mean, there's a ton throughout that I just like the design. They don't necessarily spend as much time with, but I still like the way they look and are pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, you can always look forward to some fun designs. Like even in part 4, the twins that get fused together.
Yes.
That's fun. You know?
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. Like that has to be the most fun aspect of actually getting hired on to work on one of these movies anyways. Like,
oh, totally.
Even that crappy, even in Inferno, I sort of like the execution wasn't quite there, but I liked the Chatterer with no legs, like the just walk around torso. Yeah. That was kind of neat.
Torso chatter. Yeah, that was an idea. It felt again. There's definitely a Silent Hill crossover.
There you go.
Because there's a lot of similar looks to stuff. Even the Stygian Inquisition had some cool looking. Like I liked the Auditor. I thought the Auditor was pretty cool, even though it was the German was a little on the nose, but I still it was still fun.
Right.
Who's your least favorite Cenobite? I guess.
Oh, that's a good question.
The follow up question.
I mean, I'm sure it's going to be one of those random middle ones, like because like I'm having trouble even remembering the hell, like for example in Hellworld, are there like there's probably only like one or two random Cenobites that just sort of like walk through the background in those.
Yeah, like basically Bound and Chatter kind of like have a little guest appearance.
Yeah, it's funny too because the day got away from me today, but I'm sure I was just gonna Google or I was just gonna search on YouTube and just be like, list of all Cenobites, because I'm sure some nerd out there has done an entire like half-hour long video of it to just remind myself of them, but did not get a chance.
Thank you for doing that, random nerd.
Yep, exactly.
Because I'm sure it's out there.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know who my least favorite would be. Were the Cowboys Cenobites?
No, unfortunately, I don't think they qualify as Cenobites. They I mean,
and I don't even think that they would be my least favorite, but they were just kind of like, whoa, how'd you guys get in here?
Yeah, they just, okay, we've got some Kung Fu Cowboys now. I guess, I mean, they're not, I don't know what they, like, are they just sort of Legionnaires in Hell's Army? Yeah. Like, they're the Hell Cavalry. I don't know where they fall in the pantheon of Hell Demons, but not quite Cenobites.
Yeah. And it's also, your interpretation of them too. So like I remember we talked about in the first episode about Chatterer sticking his fingers into her mouth, which just carried with it all this extra nastiness that otherwise, even if you have Chatterer back in the movies, he's just sort of like wandering around a little bit. Yeah. And they don't get to do much.
That's kind of thing. A lot of them are just sort of standing there. They're just there to kind of be like, hey, look at that guy.
Yeah.
Probably my least, like, I don't love the Wire twins from Inferno.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm not really a fan of when they make them a little bit too, like, non-human for me. Even the Chatterer beast. But I think, hands down, least favorite, Piston Head from 3.
Oh, yeah.
Doesn't seem to have anything to do with the character, whereas the other ones do. But JP Monroe at no point was like, man, I love pistons.
Right.
Which we should, I mean, honorable mention, though, in terms of favorites, for most of the Cenobites in 3. Oh, because they're so dumb and I love them.
Even like people love to talk about CD Thrower, of course, with good reason. But, the camera guy makes me laugh constantly. He's the one who just looks at people, right?
He just looks at stuff and then blows up. Yeah. Or the bartender named Barbie because his barbecue. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Why not, man? Right. Love it.
When they did get to do stuff, which wasn't actually that often, if you really want to like reflect on it, like the Cenobites didn't do a whole lot besides strolling around. I'm getting to, favorite kill, of course. But if you think about it, I don't know, the Cenobites didn't actually do a whole lot of the killing in there. Yeah. Like it took us 12 movies to even get Chatterer to attack somebody with his chattering teeth, Right. So, I mean, your mode of destruction in a Hellraiser movie are the chains. And that's fine. I never get sick of that. That's great. But by the time in Hellworld you had Pinhead decapitating somebody with a with a butcher
just
knife.
a cleaver.
Yeah. Not really the style of kill for
not even
movie.
like a cool sacrificial dagger, just a cleaver. Yeah.
Also reminding us that the only reason that kill was in there is because they had a pre-molded head of the actor at the time, which is
that's right.
Oh, that's so great.
But yeah, I mean, like, because even in the first one, like when everything's coming down, like the house is collapsing, the female Cenobite, like she's at least got more of a curved dagger looking thing. And Butterball's just like, well, whatever.
Yeah.
And just pulls out a knife. It's sort of a last ditch effort.
Yep.
Which I excuse a little bit more rather than a cleaver.
Yeah.
Particularly because it's Pinhead. Because Pinhead's like, we've seen him, hop between realms and use, shoot out chains with his mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just like, I'll do this one hands on. Feels a little strange.
Yeah. And the death scenes, especially in the first one, were a lot of the result of Julia. So it wasn't even like supernatural. It was just her bonking some guys on the head.
Well, I mean, 2 feed a guy blood so he can grow his skin back. So a little supernatural in that regard. But the mode of death, yes, definitely not supernatural. Yeah, the Cenobites are always we're kind of this looming threat. And then when we see them in 2 just get so easily dispatched by Chenard, it really doesn't feel as much like, well, he must be really powerful. Yeah. It just feels like, did they ever do anything?
Right.
But I still like them.
Yeah.
So yes. Is the answer. Yeah. They looked cool.
Chenard is not a main character. I mean, he is a villain, I guess. But having come all this way, I like Chenard even more. Because he had gravitas, he had presence. Even if he was just doing kind of like a fairly mundane, I just want to see and I want to be turned into a Cenobite. At least it was something. It
was interesting, yeah.
And I just love the stop motion animation of him at the end. I was reading reviews, like more contemporary reviews, and even some like video reviews, and people were really coming down hard on the stop motion at the end with Chenard, and they're like, "Yeah, it really took me out of it." And I'm like, guys, I'm a sucker for that stuff, and that's a big old thumbs up from me.
Oh well, yeah, I think that's a big lesson too. Is just get this series needed more old British actors.
Yes.
Some stage performers rather than community theater people they got.
Yeah. Need that gravitas. Well, we talk about how operatic these movies want to be, whether or not they succeed. I mean, even Lance Henriksen didn't really bring a whole lot to his appearance. And
he glued back his ears. You got to give him that.
But yeah, it just not even having like a main antagonist, since some of these movies just ended up being like, well, the main guy is just the shitty antagonist and the protagonist, especially in the Boda trilogy.
What if I sucked the whole time?
Right. And then, there's one demon at the very end type of thing.
Yeah. Because that middle series was very much, hey, who cares?
Yeah.
It gets away from like what really made Hellraiser work. And so much of that was that operatic big theatrical feeling that like the score would have. It just gave it the sense of ridiculous grandeur that you lose when you're just doing some like drum and bass intro, and so that's something that I was so happy to hear in the remake, is that a return to that. Yes. Because I think it just sort of sets expectations of what kind of movie this is supposed to be.
Right. Yeah, and with this one, talking about the operatic nature of it, and as we move forward, kind of a lack of like any real characters that you can kind of even latch on to. I started just really feeling that sense of like, well, none of these are really even Hellraiser movies anymore, because there's no personal drama like Frank and Julia. There's no sense of somebody actually wanting to open the box, except for like kind of in part 3. And then after a while, it was just like, oh no, I'm in hell too, or something like that. So they didn't even feel, and it obviously, because they weren't scripts written for a Hellraiser movie, but even some of the sequels just really started falling off as far as like what makes that first one an actual Hellraiser movie, in that we want somebody who wants to open the box, has this like this desire that they can't control for each other. That like chemistry between Frank and Julia is everything in that movie.
Well, and I think that's a big part of it too, that lack of the feeling of transgression.
Yeah.
And I understand like that's a little bit easier to do looking back. It seems easier to do in the 80s when it's like just, being gay was, booga booga.
Yeah.
But then you throw the BDSM stuff that people don't really know, aren't that familiar with. And as people's sexual horizons broaden as a society, and we see that stuff more, it's kind of harder to revisit, but it's not like they were trying.
Yeah.
In most cases, they just completely went away from that to do some strange moralizing in those middle ones, which I just still will never get over. They lose sight of that a bit. And I think that the remake does a good job of distilling what that meant, that desire, like you said, wanting to open the box, like one of the stuff, that desire, that addiction, that need, that want, moving in a different direction where those others really didn't. It was just like, yeah, he is a piece of shit. And then he wanted to be a piece of shit. And so that's the problem. It's like, well, that's pretty basic. Can you go a little bit deeper than that? And they didn't really have the infrastructure to do that. They didn't bother to have like characters that you cared about or any of that stuff. It was just sort of like the movie telling you what a piece of shit this guy was, not you actually seeing it.
And also, you can't really do 12 movies of just like some random guy wanting to have even more sensation in his life, because that would get really monotonous too. But when you figure out how few there actually are in this series, then it also makes you double think about what are the purposes of these stories at this point, and how far they've come away from wanting to experience the furthest reaches of sensation.
Even in Revelations, the fact that it is just, when you boil it down, it's two high school boys wanting to get laid. And like, I think that's an interesting concept that you could do that with it. Like you think you're going to go have a 80s sex comedy and then you run into Pinhead.
Sure.
Like that, if they had a decent scripted money, like that could be a really fun idea or an interesting way to take it. But then you know, something like Hellworld is just like, oh yeah, Hellraiser, whatever. Which sucks more. Yeah, that there's ways you can take the core concepts and do stuff with and like expand on them or take them in different directions that they just had no interest in doing, because they were just like, we need to get this script made for some reason. Freddy and Jason, when I say Freddy, I haven't seen a lot of those movies, but it's like, yeah, Jason, he's going to kill some kids in the woods. Okay, well, what can that gives us some freedom to move around and do some different stuff with. And yeah, towards the end of that, it felt a little bit like doing these other movies that Jason still got shoved into, but it was still sort of kept true to what Jason was, whereas this just, they did not even care.
Yeah. Was there any, I guess just beyond the first one, or maybe beyond the first two, was there any lore that was added that you liked? Because they definitely got so far away from a lot of that stuff. But I can't remember, you know, if they added something in all those subsequent things that made you like rethink the box or rethink the Cenobites. I definitely did not like it when they added an angel in Revelations, just because, as I've said before, like I just feel like it severely limits what the Cenobites are. Like the literal Christian hell is not. I like that kind of stuff usually, but I feel like it's just like, oh, it's just they're hell priests. Okay, I guess. Yeah, that's not much.
Yeah, but it's a little bit like if the angel was like, yeah, I whip people, but for goodness, you know, that would be interesting. But yeah, I mean, certainly, again, I like the stuff they added in the new one, like the different configurations of the box and what that could mean, and then just making their hell not just a black void, like it's heaven if you are a piece of shit. You know, it's great. So I like that stuff. All right. I mean, so often a lot of that stuff was just sort of added in at the last minute. Like, I still don't understand what the Deaders were even after.
Yeah.
I don't like I don't like Pinhead on a spaceship. No, basically. I mean, they do some cool box designs, but generally, no.
Yeah.
I would go with.
I wouldn't want to keep seeing something as grand as maybe part 2. But I did like seeing that for that one particular movie. Like seeing Leviathan, I thought was pretty great.
Yeah.
And, you know, the little Cenobite creation chamber and stuff like that, which, you know, the remake got into to a degree that worked for me. But I just want to go back to like a relationship drama.
Yeah.
You know, without all the extra stuff, you know.
Yeah. Well, it's like, I mean, I'll even take Judgments. Like, we added this weird Brazil element to it, which the mundanity of that kind of removes the power of the box and like the power of the whole thing in general. But I still appreciate them, like, at least it's an ethos, man. You know what I mean? Like, at least it was a concept of like, well, the boxes then just become this like way for us to move around.
Sure.
Rather than these talismans of desire and these ways to trap people.
Yeah.
Even then, I still don't. It's not something I like, but I like that they at least tried. with that one.
Yeah.
No one was opening the box on the toilet. So that's fine.
I forgot about that. My goodness. Did you read or play any games or do anything outside of the movies of Hellraiser? Did you investigate any of it? I don't want to say, did you engage with other content? Because I don't talk that way. But like any other mediums did you explore?
Well, there was no actual Hellraiser video game. There was going to be a Hellraiser 3D video game, but it got turned into Super Noah's Ark 3D. And I did not play that. How do you go from
Hellraiser to Noah's Ark?
I think you find Jesus. Yeah. I don't know.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I think it was one of those like, well, this company bought it and they don't want to do that stuff.
Yeah.
So
you didn't play the Hell World game, you know?
I did not. I tried to, but I went to a house party instead and got murdered. No, I didn't. I didn't really go into anything outside of that. I read a couple of the comics, but I didn't really read a lot of the additional Hellraiser books and such.
I read two, and one of them I always forget the name of, The Toll. But The Toll is like 100-page little book of 4 short stories, and it's by this other author, and one of them is about Kirsty and Pinhead. And then the other 3 have nothing to do with the Cenobites or anything like that at all. Mm-hmm. And it's a kind of it's a breezy 20-page read or so of just like Kirsty going to some deep, dark prison, like one of these weird like prison islands that I know actually do exist. And for some reason, she goes down there and talks to Pinhead in hell for a second, and then she comes home. So, yeah, that's about it. I also read the Scarlet Gospels, which I've been kind of interested in since it came out. And boy, howdy, that one's not for me either.
Yeah, I was going to read that, but then you were like, I don't know. So I didn't bother.
Yeah, it's funny. It is a case of, you know, I say this sometimes, but it's like too much chocolate in my peanut butter, where it's just like it all takes place in hell. And it's about Pinhead wanting to like defeat Lucifer or something like that. But Harry Del Moore goes to hell with him.
Of Scott Bakula himself.
Yes, exactly. There's a whole cast of like witchcraft type of characters that are also trying to stop Pinhead in hell. And you'd think that watching Cenobites battle demons in hell would be kind of cool, but not really. It doesn't amount to a whole lot. And yeah, I don't want to see that much of the other hell realms. Like, right. I mean,
like when the mystery is completely taken away.
That's it. Exactly. Like, I think it's great when we see it in part 2, but I don't want it to become just sort of like normalized where Scarlet Gospels felt like a D&D campaign of just like, we've got our party of adventurers and we need to solve this mystery of why is Pinhead so sad? And like, why he's losing his luster. And it's like, I guess he's about ready to be cast out of hell, but he launches an assault on Lucifer or something like that.
Why would you care that Pinhead's sad?
I don't know. Maybe that's what I inferred from it. But, but of course, our band of characters led by Harry are like all stuck in hell and they need to get out. And,
okay. Well, that would make sense if you're like, well, we need to solve this guy's quest or something. Because I was just like, if things are going well for Pinhead, that's probably not good for anybody.
Right. Yeah.
Although, I mean, as we've tracked through the series, a lot didn't go well for him.
Sure.
But he made the best of it for the most part. And then he gave up it and then got a job at the DMV. But,
sure.
Whatever. I hope things go better for the new Pinhead. I'll say that much. They seem to have a little bit more on the ball.
Right. Well, I mean, that leads us into, where do you go from here? I mean,
space, obviously.
Back to
just
space.
Jump right to space.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that the remake or the reboot or whatever it's called, it did lay enough groundwork that I think you could keep going in that world, that like Cenobite design, that look, that feel.
It makes you wonder if they are going to take Goran Viznik's character and bring him back and have him be the big baddie. But at the same time, it's like they didn't really flesh him out enough as a character for me to care that much about him.
Yeah.
The Cenobites were a little bit more interesting. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm curious because it is you do start treading the same ground if you do the same stuff again and again and again. Yeah. Like how do you reimagine it yet again? So it's like, well, okay, well, maybe it's not the sex stuff this time. Maybe it's not drugs. How do we frame desire this way?
Yeah.
Like, as you said, when you've built up enough groundwork, I think you can get away with expanding on what you have a bit more, and it's fine. And even if you keep it like, well, there just keeps being rich dudes that want to do this. I think that's kind of a fun way to go about it, where it's like, it's like Indiana Jones is always fighting Nazis trying to get relics.
Yeah.
Just, that it's Odessa. I forget her character's name, but like that it's her trying to stop these rich guys from feeling too much.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing more of like a $5 million chamber piece type, like like a relationship drama. But at the same time, we got a little bit of that with Revelations, and that was terrible. Or Judgment, whichever one that one was.
It was Revelations. Okay, yeah.
I want to see a relationship that is portrayed like Frank and Julia in the first one. Not the
you would just like to have you'd like to have characters.
Yes, I would like characters in my horror movies. Yes. Yeah. And and the Cenobites show up, and they're more like in the first one where they're less used and stuff. That would interest me, I think, the most. I'd see whatever they do after that one.
I would also watch. I think it's been on the air way too long and needs to go away, but I would watch Hellraiser, watch Pinhead answering Kurt Van Houten's "Can I borrow a feeling?" Oh yes, I have such sights to show you.
I have such shite to show you.
I have, and we've seen such shite.
Yes.
That he has a guest appearance on The Simpsons.
I love that.
They in the reboot they pulled a lot of sort of details for fan service. And I think they're free now to kind of do whatever they want. Yeah. Would I be upset if they went to space? Absolutely not.
I'd watch it.
But I think there's probably more stuff to do.
Right.
But I mean, because without wanting to know too much, because as we already talked about, destroying the mystery, like I wouldn't mind getting some hints about this Pinhead.
Sure.
What's there, because I doubt that she served in World War II. But I mean, I don't.
Yeah.
What do I know?
For sure.
Seems young, but you could be around for a long time and be a Cenobite. So.
Right. And as always, during these wrap-ups, we like to consider our favorite phrase. How far away from Baghead have we gotten? And I think there is one easy answer for this one. And it's got to be part 4.
For the furthest it got from Baghead?
Yeah. The furthest in some ways, the furthest that we've gotten from, Frank and Julia in the house.
Right.
A spaceship has to be pretty far away, but maybe we take that one out because it's so specific.
I mean, I think that's valid. I think it's because I think for some of these other things, as we've said ad nauseum, thematically they changed a bunch of stuff. They did a bunch of stuff, but taking Pinhead to space is bonkers. It is very, very. It's a strange move.
Yes.
That's definitely up there. I mean, it's basically everything from 4 on until you get to. I mean, you get some attempts to claw back, but I don't think it's until the reboot, and even then, that's slightly different. But at least it's closer to Baghead than we've been. Closer to the Baghead being the original, being what we know of.
Yeah. I mean, even though they're not great movies, Revelations and Judgment were at least closer to Baghead than half of what we had seen previous, as we said ad nauseum. At least it's a Hellraiser movie. Yeah.
We got that going for us.
Right.
I didn't even, because I was too busy thinking about that I wasn't thinking about space, but really space is nuts. I mean, that whole part of it is just bonkers because because it was a wraparound story for everything else.
Sure.
We weren't just in space. We were in space, but then it was let's go back to the 1700s though.
Yeah. And we had gone back in time in previous Hellraiser movies, part 3
but in 3, because
we go
in
back
her dream
to
world,
World War I or whatever. So at least we, it's not like time travel, but it's it's jumping around in time and seeing previous incarnations of Pinhead. But going that far afield into the future, that's a long way.
That's a very long way from Baghead.
I don't know, man. Any last thoughts on putting this box to rest? This one was a doozy, folks.
This one was rough. I mean, it's a really great concept. You can there's still so much I think to be gotten from it, to be derived from it, without just falling into doing the same story over and over and over again, which I know was as Tunnicliffe said in his, just like, well, I don't want to do the same shit that we've already done. I think now in the reboot you can afford to do it because you put your new stank on it and it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But the unfortunate turn to being just these moral fables, the bizarre idea to do one right after the other one that's almost exactly the same.
How weird.
With Inferno and Hellseeker.
Mm-hmm.
But then you go like, oh, but this one won't have Kung Fu Cowboys. And that's supposed to be an improvement.
Yeah.
And guess what? It was. So that worked out.
Sure.
That was a good call. But yeah, just it's a bummer. And I have to consciously, when I talk about Hellraiser, just think about the first three. Because before it was like, well, I've never seen the other ones. I just like these. That's fine.
Yeah.
But now I have to be like, no, I don't know. I never want to say like, don't watch it, because you can get, who knows what's going to inspire you or excite you about this stuff. But
yeah,
man, it didn't do it for me. They just very, very much didn't. It feels like they lost the plot.
Mm-hmm.
So
since January, we've been watching these.
Yeah. And so that means like since March, they've been off the rails.
That's true.
Like,
wow. Yeah. And before we get out of here, of course, in our wrap ups, we like to take a look at how many deaths happened in an entire franchise. Now, episode 1, do you remember what you guessed?
Was it 70 something?
115.
Okay, no.
Yeah. I guessed 99.
Uh-huh.
So, in 11 films, the deaths that I counted were 109. So you were not too far over. I mean, if we're playing Price is Right,
But I was over. Yeah.
But you were over. But I was still 10
over.
off. But 109. So I'm sure you can guess which movie took the cake on deaths.
I'm going to go with Hell on Earth, Part 3.
That's absolutely it.
Yeah, because he kills a lot of people.
Yeah, and I didn't even include like the entire club full of people. I'm just talking about the death shots that we get.
Okay.
Death shots that we got was 22.
Wow.
Most of the other films hovered around 5, 6, 7, 8 or so. Part 2 has 13. I don't really remember why, except for I guess you get all the Cenobites destroyed at the end. So I counted those,
Yeah, that boosts the numbers up.
Exactly. So, yeah.
What was the least amount? 1?
Least amount would be actually Part 8, which was Hell World 5.
Oh.
So I guess the 5 kids.
Right, yeah.
Part 1 had 6. But that counts like Frank dying twice. I know this gets a little unscientific here, but
the technicality.
Yeah, take it up with Pinhead. Yeah, so I don't know, 109 death scenes in 11 movies. That's still kind of high. Part 7 was Deader. That had 13, but a big part of that was that great silly shot of the chains hitting through the dead
the parallel. Yeah,
right.
Just the dude standing there.
Right. So still valid, but
it still counts.
Yeah.
Them's are bodies.
Right. So we got 109 here, which that's pretty high, I feel like.
Yeah. Well done, Cenobites.
Right.
Way to go.
Right. I don't know. Any of you out there, what was your favorite of the lesser Hellraisers? I know listener Maxine, she really likes at least the franchise in general. And a few of other listeners have messaged us about still liking this series, and even though these are kind of hard to get through. But what's really cool though is that so many people seem to go on this journey with us, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard someone say that Hellworld was their favorite. Mm-hmm. I know someone likes Inferno by virtue of it being the best of a bad bunch. Mm-hmm. It takes all kinds to make a world.
Right, sure. All right, John. Well, it's time to let's wind up our chains. Let's close up the puzzle box. Let's
sweep up the bits of Frank that are still lying around.
Yeah, let's remove the pins from our heads and put this to bed. My first question for you is, how many pairs of tiny cutoff shorts do you own?
I'll tell you this much, not enough.
Not enough. Summertime, John.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have any, I want you to cut a nice pair for yourself, maybe get a nice tank top.
Sun's out, buns out.
Preferably kind of like 80s style.
Mm-hmm.
And let's go to camp.
Yeah.
Let's go sleep away at a camp.
That's a good idea. I wonder if there's a particular camp we could do that at.
Yes. And let's be careful and sleep with one eye open or some shit, So I assume that all the kills happen while you're asleep at sleepaway camp. I don't know. Actually, we're going to do sleepaway camp, everyone. It's summertime. So, and after all that dourness of Hellraiser, we just kind of wanted something fun. And what's more fun than, I don't know, slaughtering kids at a 80s summer camp? So
what could possibly be more fun?
Let's go back to the well. Let's go back to the Friday the 13th feeling that we first felt all those years ago when we started this. I've only seen the first one, so I'm kind of excited to see the other ones. Yeah. So I think there's only 4. Maybe there's a 5th. There's a weird like half finished one or something like that we can track down. We'll get into all that next week, but I am a fan of the first one, but I'm definitely looking forward to using this as an opportunity to scratch all the other itches or whatever you want to say. Get into all the other ones, right? Yeah, I know that there are some other fans of Sleepaway Camp out there, so it's time to have a little bit of fun. Well, I hope all of you did enjoy as much as you can watching these Hellraiser movies along with us. I was listening to a podcast recently, and writer David J. Roth was talking about like deciding to be a fan of the Raiders and just sort of accepting that pain. Yeah. And that's sort of like being a sports fan is just pointlessly accepting pain in your life. And that's true with a lot of fandoms in general, I think, but I think particularly for Hellraiser, that you asked for this. Right. Sorry, if you like Hellraiser, you wanted pain. Totally. You got it. Yes. You got it, buddy. Yes. So seek some pleasure in that pain by going through 12 Hellraiser movies. So, closing the box on this one, everyone. So, all right. I think that's going to do it this week and for this franchise and for the first, 5 months of this year. So fire up some of that sleepaway camp goodness. And until then, you can find us at This May Hurt a Bit Pod on Instagram, Hurt a Bit Pod on YouTube, and you can email us at thismayhurtabitpod@gmail.com. So break out your best summer camp wear and hop in sleepaway camp, and we'll talk to you next week. Good night. Good night. This has been a Caretaker Press production. It was produced by James Strayer and edited by John C. Myers. Logo by Ethan Kimberling and music by Michael Arthur Holloway, who you can find on Bandcamp. Follow us on Instagram at thismayhurtabitpod and email us at thismayhurtabitpod@gmail.com. Give us a 5-star review over on your favorite podcast app, and we'll see you next time.